Hello, Kalli. Guy Glidden. This little screencast is going to serve two purposes. Number one, it's going to identify for you the things I want to make sure that we're together on for Excel demonstration and use. And specifically, we're going to be looking at three things: function wizard, pivot table, chart wizard. If you use Excel regularly and you keep track of numbers, you're not going to have anything else that you need to demonstrate that's going to be worth anything to me. So I'm going to trust that you got everything taken care of. But these are the three things we want to look at very specifically. And I'm going to do a little bit of a review of each of those so that we're talking the same language. Secondly, you're kind of a guinea pig here because I'm practicing on how we can improve this information for lots of people beyond you who need lots of information and support for that. So I'm going to be going back and forth between this pivot from this PowerPoint and also the data file. And here's the data file I'm going to be looking at right here. And notice I'm going to move this over here because this is where I want you to focus there. So let's start by looking at function wizard. And function wizard is this little thing that's identified by this little mark right here. So whenever I say function wizard, you're going to see it on your screen as the insert function button. And it works very simply like this. Let me scroll down to the bottom of the page. Keep on scrolling here. Okay, I go to the bottom of a column, very typical function of the function wizard. I want to create an arithmetic average of the numbers in a big column of numbers. And this happens to be a test file, and it's got 324 scores in it, so it's a pretty big file. So I simply got to put this down here where I want the total to go. Go hit the function wizard button. Immediately I get this floating screen, and you'll know it immediately if you've used that before. And then you simply need to find the function. Now, the functions are listed by name. The only problem with using this is that you have to practice a little bit to make sure the name that Excel applies to the function is what you want. I've used this enough to know that average is really a mean, which is what I want, an arithmetic average. So I'm going to say OK. Now you're not going to read this at all right now, but basically what it's doing here, and I'll go to you over to the process right here. It's saying under the function wizard, and this is what it says in the little column right here, G2:G325, and it's simply asking the question, do you want me to function wizard saying, do you want me to create an arithmetic average for the numbers in those cells? Whenever you use a colon, it's all of those two cells plus all the cells in between. That's the process that we're restarting the process. Okay, so here's where we are. So function wizard created this, so I'm going to go down there. I punched function wizard. I got the number created. I wanted to do arithmetic average. Bingo, it came up the screen, and I got it, and here we go. Now, right now in the process, I'm going to scoot this up so you can see what it created. And right here is where it created it said the average for that was 82. I like my averages to be a little more precise, so if I do a right mouse click, and it's going to format the cells. By formatting the cells, I can go in and I can create a 2 decimal place arithmetic average, which is what I got. And you also probably know that if you do this, you can also use the drag function, which is very good on Excel, and simply drag the function. So we'll scroll over there, you can see what I did. Now again, the function is what moved. It's created an arithmetic average of all these 4 particular columns. So basically, here's where we have it right now, and for the arithmetic average, your uses of the function wizard, average would be a good one, median to get the middle score, that's a good one. Standard deviation, which is a good thing if you're using big numbers, and if we want to get the variances of standard deviation. And the term person, if you want to do a correlation of 2 groups of numbers. So function wizard is a biggie that I want you to be a little bit aware of on the process. Let's move on here because I don't want to get bogged down. The purpose here is just to make sure we're together on these processes. If you have questions about how to do some of these things, that's the next step, and you're going to communicate that back to me. Okay, let's first of all delete what I did here on the averages, because I want to go fresh. And let's go back up to the top again here, because now I want to move on to pivot table. Pivot table is the heavy hitter. Pivot table is very simple to find. You go up here, you go to the insert icon at the top, you hit insert, and you'll see right down below it on the far left hand corner there's something that says pivot table. Now first of all, I make sure I got my cursor inside the area that I want to include in the pivot table. Hit the pivot table button, and with the new versions of Excel, it's real simple, because what it says right now, and I'll transfer over to the other screen here, we're going to move on down here. It says reading scores A1 colon M325. And so look right over here. Here's cell A1. Here's cell M1. If I scroll it all the way down, it's also going to tell me exactly where I'm going to be on those things. So, okay, and I've screwed that up because I was messing around. I hit the thing. Let me hit again up here. Pivot table. Got the range. It tells me what the range is. The only thing I wanted to demonstrate is you can physically change these up here in the table if you want to. Okay, if you did a pivot table correctly, you're going to tell it right away, because you're going to get these little groups of boxes over here. And on one side of the page, and on the other side of the page, which I'm going to move for you right now, you're going to get this little menu over here. So when you get that page, and it's a new blank page, when you get that right away, there's no question you've got a pivot table created. What do you use it for? Well, let's go to the simplest use right now. Let's suppose I wanted to do some averaging here. So let's pull down narrative test scores out of this column and take it down into the values box. And it says sum. Well, I don't want a sum, so I go back in here and I change the value setting here to an average. I do an OK. Let's go across here, and that's what it's created for me. And you're probably saying right now, no big deal, because we just created an average. Why would I want to do this extra step? Here's something you can't do any other way. If you leave the narrative value in the values box, if you put race in the row columns, and if you put sex in the column labels, I have now created something that you can't do. Now rather than one average, I've now got multiple averages. And that's the power of pivot table. You can disaggregate and move data quicker than any other tool if you've got it in a column. Something I would suggest that we do right away, because it always wants to go to these big values here. Let's format the cells back down to 2 decimal places, which I just did, and that makes it a lot simpler to deal with. So notice, I now have averages for all racial groups that were identified by the label in my data file. I have it also for both gender groups. I can do this disaggregation pattern, can't do them all at the same time. As you can see, I'm limited a little bit by that, but I can do all of those in various times and save the data for any categorical disaggregation that I can possibly have in options of the process. Okay, let's go to the second function I want you to be prepared for in there, and we've already got to that process, because frequency distribution and organization is a real power of this thing. Let's take this out of here and throw this away. Let's go, suppose I wanted to pull total scores down into the values column. And let's change it this time from sum to count. So we're going to create a count here. Okay, now I didn't show you what I did over here, but I changed it over here to count. And here's where I have the count process right here. Now, the next step is kind of important. It's kind of like you're parsing sentences, If I modify this value by itself, in other words, take the total icon and put it in the row labels, drop in there, big fella. Look what I've done here. I now have created a total frequency distribution of all of the scores in that table. In other words, I know on the total score, one little person got as low as a 33, and somebody got as high as a 98 on that out of the 324. So I know exactly for each score value, I know which score values were occupied and how many people occupied that score value. Now, if you're doing big numbers on a project, that's one of the first things I tell people is you got to do a frequency distribution. You got to know how the numbers are distributed. Again, that's something you can do with a big number set quicker than anything else that you can do with the process. And here's the third thing that you probably want to do with this process here. And let's go over here and get rid of this again here. We're going to move this over here a little bit. For this, we're going to go into a different category because I put on this file a number code for the performance levels of the people in this particular process. So here's I'm going to put that over here. And again, it wants to sum it again. I don't want it to sum it. We're going to change it back to count. Let me show you what I did here. I changed it to count, changed it to the 324. Now look what I do this time. This time I'm going to take performance and I'm going to put it in the row labels. And what this does is it simply has told me that whatever performance categories 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 met, these are the number of people in each categories. Now, let me show you a real cutie little thing that we can do with that here. For this way, we can also manipulate the scores by going just directly into the process. Let's put the performance values over there. Now, let's go in and say what happens if we want to do those by race. Those are the number of people in this data set who performed at levels 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 by race code. Let's do it by sex. We can do that as well. Didn't want this, not what I wanted to do there. And let's go to sex again and put it over here. Sorry about that. Okay, we're probably, I'm creating a little, okay. Now we got it set up here. Okay, so I've got a number of people by gender in this particular groups. In other words, I can come up with a number of people in performance categories. Now I might add that's exactly what you have to do when you're doing like proficiency levels for like state assessments. So now these two things have taken up most of the time. I simply want to tell you very quickly that the next thing we want to do, and we'll talk about it later, is because I didn't quite get to Chart Wizard. But if you get to the first two, Pivot Table and Function Wizard, let me tell you, Chart Wizard is not going to be a problem. Let me stop there, and I want your feedback on how you know about these things.